Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Modern Warzone Weekly podcast. A little bit of an emergency episode here today. We've got JGOD joining us as well as Mavriq because, well, there's an announcement. The anti-cheat is coming and it has a name and it's called Ricochet. Let's talk about it. Let's get straight into it. Doug, how are we feeling? Let's talk with our guests. What do we need to know? We got to tell everybody everything there is to know about this anti-cheat.
Well, first of all, the biggest question that everybody's had is this going to be a kernel level anti-cheat? And if you don't have any idea of what that means, that's okay. I didn't either until like 2 months ago. But the panel we have right here, JGOD, and especially Mavriq. Mavriq's specialty is focusing on cheating and making sure that the anti-cheat initiative is going to be working, and I would consider that your expertise. But
please don't DM me asking me how to get unbanned and what your shadow bans. I get plenty of those. I don't know how to fix that for you. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna add that.
Yeah, those are so funny. And then I always think in my head, you know your ass is cheating. No, I'm just kidding.
But first of all, Call of Duty released an entire blog post that goes over all of this. And to just start things out, we are going to read through it to sort of get a baseline for what the conversation is going to be centered around. And then we're going to try to, pose some questions ourselves about how we think this is going to do, what it truly means for the Warzone scene. Is it going to be maintainable? All those types of different discussions and questions that you guys actually care about as people who play Warzone. Everybody in this call plays plenty of Warzone. All of our careers are pretty much dedicated around it, so we truly care. But we'll just go ahead and get started into this. So first of all, announcing Ricochet, the new anti-cheat, a new initiative for Call of Duty. Ricochet anti-cheat fights unfair play across Warzone and Vanguard. The new kernel level driver is coming first to Call of Duty Warzone, and that's very specific wording that we'll point out later. Cheating in Call of Duty is frustrating for players, developers, and the entire community. Glad you guys agree. Our teams have made great strides in combating this persistent issue that affects so many, but we know more must be done. We are proud to introduce Ricochet Anti-Cheat, a robust anti-cheat system supported by a team of dedicated professionals focused on fighting unfair play. Remember that line, a team supported by a team of dedicated professionals. The Ricochet Anti-Cheat Initiative is a multifaceted approach to combat cheating, featuring new server-side tools which monitor analytics to identify cheating, enhanced investigation processes to stamp out cheaters, updates to strengthen account security, and more. Ricochet, Anti-Cheat's back-end anti-cheat security features, well, that was a lot of the word anti-cheat, will launch alongside Call of Duty Vanguard, and later this year with the Pacific update coming to Call of Duty Warzone. In addition to server enhancements coming with Ricochet Anti-Cheat is the launch of a new PC kernel level driver, developed internally for the Call of Duty franchise and launching first for Call of Duty Warzone. This driver will assist in the identification of cheaters, reinforcing and strengthening the overall server security. The kernel level driver launches alongside the Pacific update for Warzone later this year. While the kernel level driver is only a part of Ricochet Anti-Cheat, will release to PC by extension, console players playing via crossplay against players on PC will also stand to benefit. The kernel level driver will subsequently release for Call of Duty Vanguard at a later date. So before we move on into the what is Ricochet Anti-Cheat section, just dissecting this first bit a little bit, it's actually worded very confusingly. It seems like in the beginning that they're saying that it's only coming to Warzone first, and then at Vanguard it's going to be coming with Vanguard as well. And then in the very last sentence, they drop that it will subsequently release for Call of Duty Vanguard at a later date. So, any of you guys care to try to explain that?
Seems like a two-parter because they mentioned like back-end server improvements to detect cheating on statistically not anything running on your PC, and then they mentioned the kernel level. It seems like it's almost a two-parter where those server improvements will come first, and then the kernel level driver will be implemented with the Pacific update later. So that's the way it seems like. It's a two-parter, but I assume JGOD might know.
That makes a lot of sense.
No, I mean. Basically, everything was with Pacific when we had our call. They said that they didn't really focus as much on Vanguard. It was more about Warzone. So that's kind of where it was at. It's just like by the time Warzone launches. So if it's 3 weeks, we waited almost 2 years. What is 3 weeks? I don't know.
Yeah, I think everybody's gonna be okay with it. Of course we all wanted it to drop today, but at this point, if it's coming and it's gonna be good and it's gonna be as good as most people are saying it's gonna be, then yeah, I'll wait 3 weeks.
Yeah, and
Yeah, so
by that
from
3
this
weeks, we
line-
don't mean 3 weeks from now, you guys. We mean after Vanguard launches.
It's probably important.
Yeah.
So from this one line right here, Ricochet's anti-cheat backend anti-cheat security features. So what I mentioned, that first part, will launch alongside Call of Duty Vanguard, and then later this year with the Pacific update. So like, it's not like Vanguard's just left in the dust. It does seem like that backend security update will come with Vanguard first, and then the kernel level will launch with Warzone, and then come to Vanguard at the same time. So it does seem like a two-stage process where backend security features come in first with Vanguard. Then with the Pacific update, the rest of the anti-cheat essentially comes with it.
Yeah, I think that's what I get from that last line, just the specific wording of it, that the kernel level driver will subsequently release for Call of Duty Vanguard at a later date. It seems clear that they're trying to separate that from the rest of what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And do you want to tell the people real quick, Mavriq, exactly what a kernel level anti-cheat means? What does that do compared to a non-kernel level anti-cheat?
Essentially, it has, think of it like it has admin access to your entire PC. Is probably the most layman way of putting it. It has more access to your PC than, say, something like, if anybody's familiar with VAC, which is Valve's anti-cheat that runs for like Counter-Strike and a bunch of these other games. Back when Modern Warfare 2 was on PC, it used VAC. It's a lot more intrusive than that. You may have heard people talk about kernel level in regards to Riot's Vanguard anti-cheat.
For Valorant?
Easy anti-cheat. Yeah. Easy anti-cheat also runs at kernel level. BattleEye earns at kernel level. It's very common in the anti-cheat industry, I would say. The only difference between this and something like Riot's Vanguard for Valorant is that they mentioned that this doesn't boot, when you turn on your PC, that this boots only when that this kernel level driver only boots when you start up Warzone. Whereas something like Vanguard for Valorant, people were really upset about that because it started right when you booted up your PC. I think they've changed some of the ways that works now. Like you can have it turned off, but if you want to play Valorant, you have to restart your PC or something like that. When it comes to privacy, this should be a little bit less worrisome for a lot of people that get up in arms over privacy. I would actually, from the way they've structured this out, just by reading the what is Ricochet anti-cheat section, it really is similar to something like easy anti-cheat, and that they mention, using statistical analysis to capture cheaters, to detect cheaters, the kernel level driver, having a whole team dedicated to just, working on the anti-cheat system. It really does seem similar to a lot of the tools that something like easy anti-cheat would give developers. And as we know, easy anti-cheat's available for free to like every single game if they want to use it. So it seems that they've kind of developed their own version of easy anti-cheat, to just put it simply.
Yeah, and which one, just remind me, which one does Fortnite use?
Fortnite uses easy anti-cheat. I believe last I checked that they also moved from easy anti-cheat to implementing some BattleEye features, but don't quote me on that. Easy anti-cheat's also used by, as we all know, Battlefield 2042. That was something they kind of pushed out there with the marketing. It's also used for, I believe, the Hunt Showdown, maybe. Yeah, but it's used widely across the gaming industry.
When I was looking through, I think yesterday there was like hundreds of games that use different anti-cheats, and easy anti-cheat was used on a lot of them. A bunch of games I never heard of, and that probably barely even has multiplayer. But yeah.
It's very interesting that they offer their service for free. I did not know that.
Yeah. So the thing is with easy anti-cheat, while their tool is free, it's one of those things where on the spectrum of easy anti-cheat effectiveness, you have something like Apex, and then you have something like Fortnite. And easy anti-cheat, has a bunch of tools for developers to use, but if those developers don't make use of those tools, it's just not as effective as it can be. But a lot of cheat providers take easy anti-cheat pretty seriously. I know that there is a certain cheat provider that has never had a Warzone detection, and they actually just announced their Battlefield 2042 product. And on their Battlefield 2042 product, they mentioned because it's easy anti-cheat, they're going to implement things like ID verification, and they're going to have limited slots. So they're going to limit the number of users, which does help clamp down on the number of potential cheaters. This cheat will also be €100 a month. So, it's
just
cheating becomes
insane.
really expensive.
That is just insane.
What?
Yeah, cheating can become really
Just
expensive
insane.
with a kernel level anti-cheat. But like in that regards, from these providers, they always say you're paying for security. And a lot of these guys, they put a lot of money into their main accounts. So, what's $100 a month to make sure they don't get banned on their main accounts?
Yeah, I've heard people talk about numbers of like up to like $10 a day or like day payment. Every time that I hear about exactly how it works behind the scenes and the things these people pay and do to cheat, man, it blows my mind. We can move on to the next section of the Call of Duty blog, which we will link in the chat, and it will also be linked in the podcast if you're listening to this afterwards, and in the YouTube description. What is the Ricochet anti-cheat? So we're going to talk a little bit about what we were talking, but this is going to be a lot of Activision language. The new anti-cheat security initiative is designed to fight unfair play. Here is why Ricochet anti-cheat matters. A full anti-cheat system. Ricochet anti-cheat brings a broad enhancement to the security of Call of Duty, bringing server enhancements to Call of Duty Vanguard and Call of Duty Warzone. Launching first in Warzone later this year is a new kernel level driver on PC. The driver will be integrated into Call of Duty Vanguard at a later date. The new initiative allows for rapid iteration to combat a sophisticated and evolving problem. I'm really glad about that last sentence, that they don't try to dwarf the massive issue that cheating is in the gaming industry. Point number 2, Call of Duty Warzone adds kernel level driver. Kernel level drivers are given a high level of access to monitor and manage software and applications on a PC, such as your PC's graphics card driver or GPU. The driver element of the Ricochet anti-cheat system will check the software and applications that attempt to interact and manipulate Call of Duty Warzone, providing the overall security team more data to bolster security. Once the kernel level driver is deployed, it will be required to play Warzone. For more detailed information about Ricochet anti-cheat and its kernel level driver, read the dedicated FAQ, or frequently asked questions, and I'm assuming that will be at the bottom of this blog. We'll see.
Yeah.
Number 3, protecting your privacy. In its initial rollout on Call of Duty Warzone, the kernel level driver will only operate when you play on PC. That's an important thing. The driver is not always on. That's what Mavriq was just talking about. Valorant's Vanguard anti-cheat, it's on from the moment you turn your PC on. The software turns on when you start Call of Duty Warzone and shuts down when you close the game. Plus, the kernel level driver only monitors and reports activity related to Call of Duty. Feedback and transparency are crucial. I'm glad it is now. You are also a critical part in our pursuit to combat cheating. So please continue to report issues in game, allowing the Ricochet anti-cheat team to adapt all tools to combat cheaters. All right. Anything anybody wants to say about that one?
Well, point 4, the feedback and transparency part, that's actually pretty big because it shows that they're listening. I know I've been sending, I guess not master lists, but like I have like a big Excel sheet filled with a bunch of cheat providers and their Discords, their Telegrams and all this stuff. And I send it over every now and then to community managers for them to pass along. So it's nice to see that, hey, we might see some improvements in that aspect, maybe some more ban wave notifications. And there's one thing I need to mention. We're still going to see cheating. And I know people are going to ask naturally, what about Cronus? What about Strike Pack? That stuff you're still going to see. So I think I mentioned it last time, Doug, when I was on the podcast. I said something about how when it comes to cheating, it's like a hole in a boat, right? You can plug it, but water will get through. So that's some managing of expectations that I think people need to have.
Yeah, the important thing is, though, that even though some of that water gets through, if you have a team of people with buckets ready to scoop it out, it's not that big of a deal. But if you don't, and you let it continue to fill, it becomes a big problem. The one thing that I want to say about those 4 points that they made about it is that I really do appreciate that they said the new initiative allows for rapid iteration to combat a sophisticated and evolving problem. Like, they don't try to downplay at all how difficult it is to combat cheating. And their vibe so far has basically been, there's an anti-cheat coming, y'all are about to get shit on. That's the vibe I've been getting. I don't know. Their post yesterday seemed to be like it almost came across as like a parent scolding you. Like,
sure.
Hey, if you ain't learned yet, you about to learn today. But
sure.
I'm saying, like, I do appreciate that they're acknowledging that it's been a difficult problem and that it's I wish they would say more about, you know, what took so long and like when this started and all that stuff. But
I would just like for them to clap back at Engine Owning on Twitter, because Engine Owning talks a lot of shit.
Oh yeah,
for a cheat that is constantly detected. If other cheat providers are making fun of your cheat and calling it a paste from, you know, unknown cheat forums, if they're making fun of you within your own community, you have no right to talk that kind of shit about your own cheat. Like it's kind of laughable whenever I see them tweet acting all big and mighty.
Yeah, I've got these kind of like this frequently asked questions page. It was actually linked right in that same section of the kind of release, the blog post they did. And one of the things that, like what we were saying, I want to kind of re-emphasize too, is that they are recognizing, like, the question is, will this solve cheating issues? They are recognizing, like, there is no single solution or policy that can fix cheating. The Ricochet anti-cheat team commitment is a relentless pursuit of fair play, etc. And I think that's important to re-highlight. Like, this is obviously going to bring a lot of change, and it's pretty apparent that it's going to bring a lot of change. And Mavriq, I want to bring up that screenshot in a bit that you sent me, because I think it's comedy as well to add to this kind of this conversation.
Just don't pull it up. Don't pull it up, because, you know, I didn't blur out the names or anything yet.
Oh,
so
gotcha. I can read it out.
I am in the server.
Yeah. I'll read it out in a little bit. But regardless, they said there's no single policy or solution, but also there's a team behind it, which is what Doug was highlighting earlier. Like, having an actual team behind Ricochet, not just saying, hey, hopefully this works and we'll see what happens. Having a full team dedicated to continue to adjust and change and do the ban waves that necessary should things continue is worthwhile and worth noting. But I'm hoping that it will create a much better place for the game and the health of the game going forward, which it sounds like it will.
Yeah, you're just hoping for 2v2s to return. All right,
look,
we know
we don't need to talk about tournaments yet. I'll have my time at the end of this episode. Trust me, I've got a lot of thoughts, but I'll wait and we'll keep running through this.
All right. The next point that we're on to after reading those four, we'll go through and read the fact. That'll probably be the last thing that we do with the blog post. How the kernel level driver works. So I like that they're actually explaining, like, they're trying to make us understand instead of just being like, hey, we got an anti-cheat, it's gonna work, believe us. The kernel level driver for PC, as part of the Ricochet anti-cheat system, monitors software or applications that attempt to interact with Call of Duty Warzone. The driver will help the Ricochet anti-cheat team to learn about suspicious behavior, using that data to strengthen overall anti-cheating security over time. Ensuring player privacy is extremely important, and the prospect of a kernel-level driver may give some players pause. Given those concerns, here's how your privacy will remain unaffected with Ricochet anti-cheat. And I'm just going to say this, the reason that they're including this excerpt is because there is a ton of online backlash against how Vanguard, the Vanguard anti-cheat and Valorant works, and a ton of people feel like it's a huge invasion of privacy. Ricochet anti-cheat's kernel-level driver operates only while playing Call of Duty Warzone on PC. I feel like they've said that 3 times now. Ricochet anti-cheat's driver is not always on. Ricochet anti-cheat's driver monitors the software and applications that interact with Call of Duty Warzone. When you shut down Call of Duty Warzone, the driver turns off. Testing for the new driver has been done to ensure system stability across a large range of PCs. The Ricochet anti-cheat team is committed to continued testing and iteration after launch. Player reporting will remain a critical element in all anti-cheat measures, so it's important that players continue to report suspicious behavior they encounter online. So if you get killed by a cheater, spam that button like you've never spammed before.
Hopefully it's actually a cheater, though.
Yeah. Another layer in the battle against cheaters is the evolving use of machine learning. Now, I talked about this like months ago because there was a LinkedIn job listing of where they had been working on this, and we're going to use machine learning to develop this. Machine learning algorithms examine gameplay data from the server, helping to identify suspicious behavior trends and add another layer of security as part of the overall Ricochet anti-cheat initiative. I'm going to revisit that in a second, Mavriq, and ask you a question about it. A critical element of security is ensuring your own account is protected. Two-factor authentication is extremely important for your account security. We strongly recommend two-factor authentication for Call of Duty. Log into your account and learn how to enable two-factor authentication. You should definitely do that, by the way, especially if you play Call of Duty a lot, because the people who tend to get their accounts hacked and stolen have Damascus or Mastery camos, and then by the time they realize their account's been stolen, it's already been sold on like the black market, and it's just gone. And Activision support, not to talk any trash, but good luck with them. It'll be a while. But I wanted to ask you the question about where they say another layer in the battle against cheaters is the evolving use of machine learning. Algorithms examine gameplay data from the server, helping to identify suspicious behavior trends and add another layer of security.
What is that? What is machine learning?
To me sounds like they're gonna machine.
Like let's break that down. Like I want to talk about that whole concept, but I think there's a lot of people, including myself, because I'm just a dude that sits in the tournaments and watches tournaments. That's what I do. What is machine learning? How does it affect this kind of algorithm for the anti-cheat? Besides like the very basics of like a machine is learning. Like give me a little bit more than that.
In the case of finding cheaters and detecting cheaters, it's typically you have to feed a bunch of information to the specific. I'm trying to think of like the easiest way to explain this. So you're essentially feeding a bunch of information on known cheaters, usually known cheaters, cheaters you've caught, information you can take from them. So in the case of Call of Duty stats, not just things like headshot percentage, but maybe things like shot distribution, right? So like 40%, this guy's landing 60% of his shots, but 40% of them are to the head, for instance, right? Like the smallest little data points, and you can essentially build a model of what a cheater should look like. Now I don't know how not just accurate, but the range of cheating they're going for, if they're going to be detecting like the most blatant of the blatant, or if they're trying to really get this down to people that have like quote unquote are legit cheating, so they're only using walls, or they're using a really low a really weak aimbot, for instance. They've had it configured that way. I don't know exactly how effective it'll be on this front, because while machine learning is used, I don't want to say very commonly, but it's somewhat common to detect cheaters from a stats perspective. I know people have brought up, and I've brought it up before, but like VACnet, for instance, because Counter-Strike has a replay system built in, and they have this whole Overwatch system for, community looks at a replay and they dictate if this person is cheating or not. I don't know exactly what they'll be looking at when it comes to, are they going to be looking at stats? Are they going to be examining the smallest of things, like, they have some sort of replay system in the background, and they're able to look at, someone, like if a mouse movement, is really straight and snaps onto a head versus it looking more human and there's a little bit more of a curve. Like there's a lot of small things you can kind of get into with the nitty gritty, but it kind of depends on the approach they're taking. They didn't give us much information, probably to make sure that, it's not super easy for providers to be able to, get around it or trick the system. But from the way they've talked about it, I assume it's going to be stat analysis using machine learning to kind of have something to compare, player one stat to player two who is a known cheater. So
I want to jump in, and this is like really a question, not necessarily a statement, but the idea behind this seems like the longer that this is in place, the more and more information it'll have, the more it can learn, the better it'll work, right?
Yeah, it'll only get better with time. Now, I mean, we don't know how long they've had this in the works. If this was something they implemented like 5 months after the release of Warzone, that's a good thing. It's not going to be super effective on the machine learning front, because it still takes a lot of data, because there's a lot of different cheating play styles involved. There's a lot of different configurations for aimbots. There's a lot of different, it is a battle royale, so there is a level of randomness. If this was only gathering data from like 6v6, that's a lot more data you can gather, because there's just more engagements overall. But and mind you, this is also very important, and we almost like kind of brushed over this because everybody is here for Warzone, but the challengers scene for Call of Duty has had issues with people thinking someone's cheating, someone's not cheating, and these are people playing for Call of Duty League spots, or to eventually move up into that echelon of play. So this will also help the Call of Duty challenger scene a bunch. So it'll be interesting to see the strides made there. But yeah, when it comes to machine learning, I'm 50-50 on this, because they didn't give us much information, so it's hard to make like a good judgment on it.
Totally fair.
Yeah,
that's good to know.
A year from now, this may be way better than it is now.
Sure.
Not maybe, it will be better than it is now.
I have a question involving this that I've been wondering. Are they able to use the data from the inception of Warzone up until the release of it? Like, have they been feeding that into what they're building as an algorithm / AI?
Well, it depends if they're logging it, right? If they're not logging any of the data from that first month of Warzone, then obviously they won't have
I feel like they are though, because they randomly like publish like the total number of people killed, and it's like in the billions, bro.
Yeah, but like that kind of data is easier to log compared to something like, you know, shot distribution percentages, for instance.
Yeah.
So it depends on what data they're using, and of course that's not going to be public, because that would just make it easier for cheat providers to you know, hey, use these aimbot settings to make it not look as suspicious. But the good thing about this, though, is that you should, you know, like whenever you get into a game and you're like, yo, this guy's like level 10 and he has 100 kills in this lobby and he's literally just spinning around getting kills. He's spin botting. What the hell? Those guys.
Spin botting, dude. Those crack me up when I see those clips.
Those guys, you know, rage cheating is kind of in the crapper once this gets implemented.
Yeah. Okay. Super interesting. Next thought I had, JGOD, I know you were a part of a call with some what I'll call higher ups. What can you share about that call? What did that look like? Were they kind of just explaining all of this beforehand, and kind of wanted to get this from your perspective?
There's something big that JGOD's pretty much.
Yeah, they kind of pretty much went through everything we kind of went through in the blog. But the difference was that there was like a 15-minute Q&A. Like this was 45 minutes. They went 45 minutes explaining what we've kind of gone through so far in the blog. And then at the end, there was like 15-minute Q&A where people were able to ask other questions where they're like, hey, what about a whitelist? What about Cronus? And that's kind of where it was like more interesting stuff to me. Like this stuff's straightforward. It basically means less cheaters that you're going to run into. Cool, straightforward, do what you got to do. And then, but the actual anti-cheat stuff, when it came to the Cronus, is kind of an interesting feature. I don't know if the machine learning will be used primarily for that. Like later on, it'll be able to counteract that, because macros are inhuman when you're using any like a Cronus, you know, type or strike pack, whatever. They're doing something that is like computer driven, so it's the same every single time.
Yeah, there's no randomness.
Yeah, there's no randomness. So it's pretty easy to detect a macro if something's doing something repeatedly. And if there are certain macros that are more popular, then those would just be able to be detected easy. They could even probably go to Cronus. Let me look up the script and oops, there it is. That's what we're looking for. Banned. Sorry. So I think that's cool. I think that's an interesting thing, because I think there's a lot of people that think everyone's using that, and it's basically impossible to prove if you're playing on PC, because you have to play on a wired connection unless you get like a PS4 Bluetooth dongle that costs like $200 because it's discontinued or some like randomness. I don't know. Then they talked about the whitelisting, which I think there's a lot of confusion about that, but they got asked directly. They're like, well, how does this whitelist work that everyone talks about?
Ooh.
And they basically said that there's two things that the whitelist does. One is it basically prevents you from going into shadow ban lobbies, which are not even a term they use for it, but those are the high queue lobbies where, you know, you're locked in 300 because you 300 ping or whatever plus. And even though those are the ping that you queue into, that's not the ping of the actual lobby. It's just kind of a separating system based off a lot of reports, because obviously if Nick Merckx has 50,000 people watching and he goes plays Warzone and the threshold to get thrown into shadow ban lobbies is like 12 reports, he's going to do that in his first lobby.
Sure.
And people just, and that'll happen, and then he's shadow banned and he can't stream for a week or whatever. I don't know, you know, he'll just jump on something else, but you know what I mean? So that there's that so that they don't get mass reported. And then the other part was to do the World Series of Warzone lobbies, which is pretty straightforward. They can't even queue into other lobbies during that time. And then he said specifically, I got to get the right wording, because I was taking notes to make sure I got the right wording. And I even said it in my video this morning.
I love that.
So it seems like, just off of the first parts that you were saying, JGOD, and what we just talked about with the machine learning aspect of the anti-cheat, it seems like if it's going to be mainly like focusing on statistics and building its algorithms and data off of that and picking and choosing, the macros definitely seems like it would be easy to spot. But another thing, going into like your expertise, which is doing all your loadouts and getting stats and whatnot, you can actually, like, I believe that, or this could be completely off base and wrong, but not only like we get to tell like what somebody's headshot percentage is when we look it up, but I guarantee you on the back end, they can tell how many neck shots, how many stomach shots, the percentage of chest shots, because you hear all these people that talk about Cronus users and cheaters. They say, oh, it's a soft body lock, stuff like that. Like, I think that I would assume that they would have that on their back end to be able to just automatically detect that somebody's hitting 80% chest shots and never hitting a headshot or never hitting legs or anything like that. I would hope
I would
so,
assume that's the case too, because especially when they do some random off the wall balancing changes, they're like, yeah, they nerfed the neck damage from 1.1 to 1.04. It's like, well, how would you know that that's the issue on the weapon unless you were tracking the stats to determine that that's the reason that people are getting kills more often? It's kind of one of those things.
We just found out about neck damage like not even like three or so months ago, right?
Yeah, I think we heard
started
about it
getting
probably like 6 months ago, but we didn't get actual confirmation that it existed because nobody really thought to cared to test it, since there's only like 3 people or 4 people that really test. And then True Game Data, he figured out where the spot was, and on the front of the person, it's very hard to get a neck damage shot, in my opinion. On the back, it's super easy to get a neck, like you can get it 10 out of 10 on the back if you're shooting somebody in the back. But on the front, it's very hard to get a neck shot damage, like on a real target that's moving. It's just not practical. But what the guy said is nothing in the system, regardless if somebody's whitelisted or not, would make them untouchable. So if you cheat, you get banned, regardless. It's not like the AI goes, you know what, this guy's whitelisted, let's not ban him. They're not going to get some kind of special access where they're going to be able to open up their cheat programs while the game's open. Like, that's not how it works.
Yeah, so you mentioned that it was like a 2-part process to the whitelist that they said, and I'm assuming that was all part 1. So what was the second part they talked about?
No, that's what I'm saying. It was 2 parts. It was one for the shadow bans and then one to get into special lobbies like World Series of Warzone.
Right.
They didn't elaborate to say, oh, does that mean that these people will get easier lobbies? We'll never know. I mean, who's able to distinguish if they play in the morning, if they VPN, if they're playing with random people? I don't know. There's no way to prove that stuff.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, that's like, if they got into special lobbies, whatever, I don't really care about that. I mean, that's a privilege, cool, whatever. But at the end of the day, if somebody's cheating, they're gonna get banned. That's really what it came down to.
I think what's really important to highlight out of what you said and reiterate for everyone out there, because I think a lot of people don't understand this concept, is that if you are a large streamer and you are playing in a lobby, there are people spam reporting you constantly. And so there has to be some sort of a system for Activision to separate who you are and why you're getting spam reported. If you're some random Joe Schmo that nobody knows and you're getting spam reported, you're probably cheating. If you're some massive streamer and you're getting spam reported, you're probably not. But it doesn't mean that the anti-cheat's not going to detect your cheats if you're whitelisted. And I want to be very clear about that. The whitelist is for the spam report system, not for the anti-cheat.
So there's 2 things I want to publicly talk about based now that this whole talk has been everywhere on the internet. Apparently, we all deny the existence of a whitelist and we are all streamer ass kissers. But what I would like to say is that there is one. Clearly, JGOD just said it. It's not a secret that there was one. First of all, it was made very public during the first World Series of Warzone that you had to be whitelisted to be placed in special lobbies. Number 2, I want to let you guys know that there's no way to concretely prove whether or not somebody is getting assisted by Activision and placed into easier lobbies for easier content like everybody likes to talk about. I'm sure it's possible, and it clearly is possible, but there is no way to absolutely determine whether or not it's happening. And nobody that has the information about whether or not it's happening will ever come out and say it because it would be detrimental to them. And number 3, I just wanted to say that when it comes to these things, and we're talking about the whitelist, I've been asked this so many times recently, and it's like the new thing the Hackuzation community is focused on. Recently, there was a World Series of Warzone event where everybody had to be whitelisted to join. After the event ended, there was like 100+ people that I saw who are big streamers, who are mid-sized streamers, small streamers that competed in the World Series of Warzone, and they all got blacklisted. And everybody was trying to figure, like, everybody, not blacklisted, but they all got put into shadow banned lobbies. They got shadow banned. And everybody tries to use that as a reason to say that those people were cheating and they got placed in a lobby and the Activision just pulled them off because they're on that whitelist. No. something went wrong on the back end with Activision after the tournament was over that did not put these players in normal lobbies that they had to fix. None of those players that were accused of that have been come out as being cheaters or doing anything wrong. So if you see anybody peddling that BS, go ahead and tell them to shove it.
Are you actually getting DMs about that in that one instance?
Yeah, I had a whole conversation with a guy yesterday, and it ended up leading into like I actually do reply to DMs if people ask me genuine questions. And this guy, I went through his profile. He does keep up with the accusation community. I see him talk to them frequently, but he was respectful. Okay. So I responded to him, and he was asking about that, and I explained to him why that happened and why it possibly could happen again. And then he moved the topic, he moved the goalpost immediately over to what about favoritism? Like, what do you think about favoritism and these streamers who get shadow banned being able to be buddy with Activision and just immediately get it removed? And I was like, is it favoritism, or is it the fact that they have so much influence that it's much easier to notice that they have been improperly shadow banned and then immediately take care of the case?
Yeah,
I think it's more so the fact that it's much easier to notice when Z-Laner tweets that he's been shadow banned than when Schmo Joe with 8 viewers on Twitch gets shadow banned, and it's stuck like that for like 2 weeks. Yep. And that's obviously a problem with Activision support, but I wouldn't exactly call it favoritism. Yes, there is a whitelist, but if there wasn't a whitelist, top streamers would never play this game because they would have the worst experience ever.
Exactly. Again, last time I'm saying this, and then we can move on from the topic because there's a lot of people that still don't understand. The whitelist is so that large streamers who get spam reported just for being a person do not get shadow banned in the game, so that they will continue to play the game. That's the reason. All right, we can move on.
We are almost through with the blog post. I'll just read off this last excerpt, and then we have the frequently asked questions that you guys can pick up a couple of them that you think are worth reading. When Ricochet Anti-Cheat launches, we intend to amplify its arrival, both in-game and by using our communications channels, our blog, social media, and other forms of outreach to keep everyone informed. I feel like that should go without saying, but I guess after the last 2 years of nothing talking about it, at least they put that in there. The Ricochet Anti-Cheat team's commitment is the relentless pursuit of fair play, which has fought against the sophisticated issue of cheating. We are dedicated and determined to evolve the Ricochet Anti-Cheat system over time, fighting for the community against those that aim to spoil their gaming experience. For further information, click here, and then it takes you to the FAQ. Yeah, they reiterated in that last little excerpt that it's a team. I would be interested from my end, and just based on what I usually cover on Modern Warzone, I'd be very interested to know how large the Ricochet division is within Activision or Raven or whichever of their studios or divisions is heading this. I'd like to know how many people are employed there. You know what I'm saying? And like, I'm sure they're all software engineers and stuff, but I just would like to know how big it is, because one thing that we haven't talked about yet, but we did mention that it's almost impossible to stop each and every single one of the cheaters, that some will always get through. But the most key thing is having a team dedicated to it to make it non-profitable for them, because this is all for money. If they have to work their ass off to get this cheat out and only 10 people buy it because they're sick of getting hardware ID banned and are on their 5th PC, they will stop doing it. It will no longer be profitable. It won't be worth their time or money, and they will move on to another game that's popular with a much easier way to thrive.
Yeah, so there is something to be said that, like, they keep talking about transparency and you know, how they want to be open to with the community. They could, and I'm surprised we haven't seen this, but like some sort of Twitter account for Ricochet, or you know, someone that's, because I know for Vanguard, for Valorant, you can find like the head of the Vanguard team. You know, you can find, you know, people that communicate with the, you know, with the Valorant community that work for the Vanguard anti-cheat in Valorant. So, you know, I'm surprised we haven't really seen like, oh guys, you know, you guys can, you know, forward your concerns to me, or maybe even a specific community manager dedicated to anti-cheat concerns, something like that. I'm surprised we haven't seen anything like that yet.
I'm all about good communication, but I do think that they did the right thing by not doing that, because that guy would get absolutely fried before he was able to do his job.
You're right about that.
Don't hire me.
You gotta tell people about that after the anti-cheat is starting to work and people are happy again, or else that guy is literally just being thrown into a furnace.
He's gonna have to be like, you know, Vandahar during Black Ops 2. He's gonna have to get like his own security detail. You know, it's gonna be like that. Yeah. So you're probably right about that.
I can't believe that's a real story, bro.
Dude,
Yup.
I'm so out.
Can, go a little crazy.
I do not want to be the fall guy. I don't want to be the guy that everybody's DMing and raging about if it doesn't work. Like, I'm so out on that. It's insane. You're gonna get ripped apart if it's bad.
So thankfully, we do have JGOD here as well, and JGOD is fortunate enough to have a great career and do everything he does, and he's able to get involved in some of these higher up phone calls. I would like to know, JGOD, what was the vibe? What was the vibe you got from Activision about this announcement? How many people of the team did you talk to? And do you remember, because I know you take really good notes, do you remember who specifically you guys were speaking with and from which studios?
I didn't take notes of their individual names.
Okay.
There was about like 3 people, or it was 2 guys specifically that were kind of like in charge of the entire Ricochet thing, and they were kind of talking back and forth about, like, they were handling different topics because maybe they specialize in a specific area, or there was other questions, and then there was other people from Activision in the call, but they didn't talk. They were just there. And then there was a few other content creators, but they were using their legal names, so I didn't know who was who. I could recognize voices though.
Gotta be weird, dude.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that sounds like what's his name, you know? So there was that. But overall, I mean, they seem very serious about the issue, that they seem pretty confident that they was going to fix a lot of the issues. But like the blog basically covers exactly what they were saying from the entire thing. So it's pretty straightforward. The only thing that wasn't in the blog is, like I said, the Q&A portion that we were able to talk about, which I mentioned.
So, but they seemed, their overall tone seemed very confident. It never seemed, they were straight up like, yo, this is what's happening. I don't know how to put the question I'm trying to ask.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that was pretty much it. Obviously, there were some things that they're still planning to work on. Like one thing that was brought up that we haven't really talked about is the streamer mode.
Yeah, so they talked about that?
Yeah. So they talked about a streamer mode, and pretty much they're going to copy and paste what Cold War has, which, if you're unfamiliar with that one, is when you're in the lobby, like the loading into the lobby, your your gamer tag or whatever is visible. But then once you're in a lobby, it's going to hide your name, and you could choose to hide other people's names. And then people were like, well, how does that work when reporting people? Because obviously that's kind of weird. So when you are in a lobby and you get killed by a cheater, then you're able to still report that cheater, whatever, and it automatically get reported to the person. But like, let's say you didn't run into the cheater, because let's say you're playing with me, we both die, I happen to die to a different player than you did, and we're not able to spectate the cheater, then what happens is when we go to report, you're not going to really have a way to do that other than using COD Tracker. So they were talking about ways to like solve that problem. They're still working on that issue. But that's more for manual reporting. That's like if the anti-cheat hasn't already caught the person. And this is more suspicious activity. So those should be like cut down significantly. The number of people you're suspicious about should be way lower. And they also talked about a stream sniper queuing system that they're going to copy that from Cold War, where it's a randomized queue. So I could press Q right now, but it could throw me in a random queue in 5 minutes or 30 seconds or right away or however. So those things will be launching with, I'm not sure if it's Vanguard specifically or when, the Pacific
app, yeah. That's actually extremely interesting. So it sounds like you guys got to have a pretty good dialogue overall about the streamer mode, and you guys were allowed to, voice the concerns even with the solution they were providing you, that you were able to say, well, what about this situation? Or, well, what about this situation? Instead of, it just being some oversight and then they release it and it not work right. They seem pretty receptive to that. So you can't remember if it was like Sledgehammer.
They were pretty straightforward about what they were saying. I mean, it was pretty descriptive when they're like, they only had to say it once. It wasn't like a lot of follow-up questions after that, because it was only a short time.
So yeah, you said it was like 15 minutes of Q&A. They didn't. You don't remember it? You said it was 2 of the like leaders of the Ricochet team. They weren't described as being from Raven or from Sledgehammer.
I don't recall.
Okay.
I don't recall. It was
sure
like,
we can find that info somewhere.
You guys can't record this, and I was like, oh shoot, okay, I got to take notes. I was like.
That's actually very good, though. I did not think, the Q&A section is always interesting. The last one I heard about was very interesting, too, when it came to the initial, we're working on the anti-cheat that they teased about. I remember hearing about that phone call, and there was a Q&A session. But what were you gonna say, Gojj?
No, I was going to say, I think I would love to, not that we have to wrap up by any means, we can continue to talk quite a bit, but since we've kind of walked through all of this, if there's anything on the frequently asked questions, of course, we're going to answer that. But I would love for you guys, Mavriq, JGOD, to give some final thoughts. And then I figure we could do our own Q&A session. Of course, we're not going to have all the answers, but if you guys want to ask us questions, I can do the moderator for that. So if you go over to our live YouTube recording right now, live stream on YouTube, Modern Warzone Weekly, Doug should have tweeted out the link. You can ask questions in there, just at Modern Warzone Weekly in the chat, and I'll read through those and ask some of those to you guys. But any final thoughts, any other comments you wanted to bring in, Mavriq, JGOD, before we go to a Q&A?
Yeah, I'm starting to already see some pushback to the kernel level anti-cheat on Twitter. I mean, it's a couple comments here and there, but I kind of wanted to nip it while I brought it up.
Sure.
This is pretty much every effective anti-cheat runs at kernel level, with Vanguard from Riot being the most intrusive, I would say. That's the cost of fighting cheaters. Sadly, that's the cost of fighting cheaters, especially on PC. So yeah, I mean, there is some cause for concern for Activision having kernel level access, but I mean, if you don't want cheaters, it comes with the territory. So it's either we get the occasional cheater in your games, or we deal with the infestation that we've been dealing with for the past, since release. And they say they're not running at boot. I'm sure people will find things about it once it actually releases. Data miners will find things. Maybe, it has a little bit more access to information than they said. But like, my whole thing is, let's not judge it until it's actually in our hands, until it's actually been released. But yeah, I don't really see the concern with the kernel level access.
I don't either, especially with how they put a lot of focus in that blog post about how your privacy is going to be protected. This will only run while you're on Warzone, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I agree with that. I knew there's always going to be pushback to anything. You can't ever make everybody happy, but this is the best solution. Like, if they would have announced an anti-cheat today and it didn't have the word kernel level in it, the internet would have exploded.
I totally agree. Jay, got any final thoughts before we get to Q&A?
Yeah, to tack on to what he was saying with the kernel level anti-cheat, in the meeting that we had, they said that, obviously it kind of came to the point where they had to go kernel level because the cheat manufacturers, or whatever you want to call them, are going to that extreme, and it's almost like the arms race. And that's why cheating will never be gone, is because you put on better armor, they get better bullets. You get better armor, they get better bullets.
Sure.
And it just goes back and forth. And at certain times the bullets will be better than the armor, and certain times the armor is going to be better than the bullets. But they basically, it was impossible for them to combat cheating with their current system, so they had to go to that level, or else we would just be complaining about cheating for another year.
Sure. Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, as JGOD just said, better armor, better bullets. This will, start somewhat of an arms race, as I would say. Just learning from other games that have, really good anti-cheats. The lengths providers go to over there. Some of the lengths providers will go to over there is limited slots, so they don't sell it to everybody. Some providers, require ID verification in an application to use. You have to apply almost like for a job to be able to use their cheat. There's different sorts of things you can do when it comes to, using an Arduino aimbot. You can put some pieces of hardware in your PCIe slot and a program to be able to read data, game data, without actually having to open up like your typical cheat loader. There's different sorts of hardware things you can do to get around really, really intrusive anti-cheats. And that's not just going to be, super expensive, but there is this arms race. So this is going to be a never ending fight, really. So when someone, sees a cheater, please don't just send us, me, Doug, any of us a DM saying, oh, look, your anti-cheat sucks. A, we're not developers. And B, cheating will always be a problem. It's just a kernel level anti-cheat, raises that barrier for people wanting to cheat.
Fix your game.
Yeah, that's the as good as it's gonna get, I want to say. Not to be doom and gloom.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Well, a couple questions in here that I think are pretty interesting. I mean, number one, I know the answer to this, I believe, but I wanted to field this to whoever wants to take it. Does this include things like VPN?
I was thinking about that myself. I'm not sure that it will interact because I don't know if the
It
net
depends
Duma
on how they. It would depend on how
there was a question brought up.
Oh, JGOD's got it.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah, there was a question brought up about that. It wasn't specifically about VPNing, but they said, okay, so let's say there's a streamer that is streaming through OBS. Obviously, that's some software that is open. So they're going to go through a trial and error on whitelisting certain programs, because there are certain people that have disabilities as well, where they actually need certain software to even be able to aim, because maybe they're, they have one hand or something like that. So there are going to be certain apps that are whitelisted. I don't know if something like a VPN service would be whitelisted or how that would work, because keeping in mind that these programs, it's more just making so your game can't even open. So it's not like you're going to get banned for using any of these things. It's just you literally will not be able to open your game. So
And there is some of that to a little bit of effect right now. For instance, let's say I try opening Wireshark. Let's say I want to do some sort of like testing on tick rate, right? And I open up Wireshark and I try to open up the game, it'll auto close. So there is like they've been using that a little bit, but I assume that list for programs will expand. And as JGOD mentioned, yeah, like when it comes to disabilities, there's a lot of programs that people need to be able to, run certain adaptive controllers, for instance, or even something like a Steam controller, which I have right here. If I want to use this isn't a native input for Warzone, right? This only works if I have Steam running in the background and I have to do some weird things to get the overlay working with Warzone. So like it's gonna be a trial and error process. We're gonna have to deal with certain programs, certain complaints for some time where hey, this thing isn't working that I use all the time.
Sure.
That's gonna be definitely a trial error. But yeah, when it comes to VPNs, you don't have to have a program running for a VPN necessarily. You can download a config file, open up your NetDuma software and throw that config file in there, and you can essentially have a VPN working. So it's not as simple as just like blocking one VPN service. There's going to be a bunch of trial and error.
Yeah.
Just to mention, NetDumas aren't not. I use a NetDuma. Everyone, they're not exclusively used for VPNing. Okay, and they're also. I have two here, and I don't even use a VPN yet, even though. One thing that I think the general public doesn't understand is that ever since I started watching Twitch, way back when Summit 1G was still playing H1Z1, I don't even know how long ago that was. Every single streamer you watched, and still to this day, a lot of PUBG streamers still do it. They have a sponsorship with a VPN. Some type of like NordVPN used to do thousands of them, and I'm sure they still do. And that's usually as a protection software for the streamer, so that weird people on the internet can't get our IP address and figure out our address and all that other weird stuff. So there are other uses for VPNs outside of it. And I actually walked away from a deal with a VPN company just because I didn't want the backlash from the Warzone community. If I were to be like, hey, use this VPN, they'd be like, oh, you cheater.
I know. Well, the other thing, I've done some sponsored videos with VPNs, and it's like legitimately the main thing I would ever use a VPN for is like, for example, I don't know if you know, well, you probably do, but remember when the Michael Jordan documentary came out and they were talking about like all that? That was on ESPN, and it wasn't available on Netflix, right? It came to Netflix like 3 months later. But if you came to Canada, guess what? It was available. It was available, and you could watch it day one. Makes no sense, but that's how it works.
Yep.
I mean, my entire life playing on I always played on Xbox till this last year, and I've always, you can't really call it a VPN because it's within the system, but I would always change my country to New Zealand on the night of a game release. I was playing Red Dead Redemption 2 like a whole day before all my friends
like 18
do.
hours early.
Yes.
Well, the other thing is because I was looking into when I got into before streaming and all that stuff. There's a thing like buffer bloat that's even important. I guess that has like an issue with your internet that the Duma ends up actually helping with the configuration for that as well. It's more of a technical thing, but you could actually do a buffer bloat test, and that could be an issue that like you have issues with your internet. And you don't even have bad internet. It's just the configuration. I don't know. It's kind of weird stuff.
So that's on the VPN subject. So we can move on to the next question. Gojj, I'm sure Gojj has one already ready, but I'm going to answer one that I saw in the chat from Hope. And this is something I thought about because it's something that I used to primarily deal with. There's all types of people out there who get into the game in ways they're not meant to, not just to cheat, but to also provide information to other people. And that means data mines. And a lot of these, a lot of people, even graphic artists who don't data mine for the purpose of leaking information, pull models from the games to use within their thumbnails. And I believe, I don't know, I'm not an expert on anti-cheat. Mav is, so I'm sure he'll answer this. I don't know if this is going to put a stop to that, but I do know if I was Activision, I'd be trying to stop it. Number one, not just the model pulling, I'd focus on the data mine stuff, because every update that they've ever done to Warzone, there's stuff that's coming out 2 months ahead of time in there, and it just ruins the excitement. You know, they've completely, the easiest thing to leak used to be I would post all the new playlists for the next season because they would all get added to the files the night of. And nowadays they've kind of like circumvented that whole thing, because they actually give us a month worth of playlist with every update. Like, they just straight up tell us there is no secret anymore. But I do think that will affect that. How will that work, Mav?
Kind of. So for instance, a lot of these games that have, you know, easy anti-cheat, Valorant's Vanguard, for instance, right? They still have a data mining community. When it comes to bypassing an anti-cheat to data mine, it's very different than bypassing an anti-cheat in order to, you know, read positions of enemy players on the map for, you know, like an ESP or like a radar hack, right? It's two very different use cases that you're trying to deal with there. So data mining will still be a thing. It'll be maybe a little bit more difficult, but, you know, there'll be a tool people will find a way around that. And because, you know, it's not out of malice, I would say, I think those guys will be fine, especially because a lot of other games, you know, that have kernel level anti-cheat, for instance, they let data mining be a thing. They see that it is somewhat not lucrative, but it is a great way to drum up hype. Like, it's not really something they look super down upon. Sure, you know, some developers may not, you know, like it that their work is being leaked a little bit early when maybe it's not completely finished, for instance. But like, on the whole, it's not something that they're going to target as much as something like cheating. Hopefully that answer makes sense.
Yeah, so you don't think it'll really affect graphic artists and people in the Call of Duty community trying to pull models to like do stuff with, or even like Black Ops 3 mod type people used to use that for their zombie mods.
Yeah, so I mean, back in the day, especially a game like Black Ops 3, a lot of the old games that were on Steam, for instance, had some sort of mod support already there. Modding, I would say that like modding to create new content, like we used to see back in the day, is not really even a thing now. When it comes to graphic artists or like thumbnail artists trying to pull models, I know I've heard from a couple where it's like the model is already kind of low res, so they kind of have their own, you know, way that they get around that. A lot of them have like custom models they've spent hours making, but I don't want to say it's not DOA, you know, like when this anti-cheat drops, those guys will still be able to do their work.
Okay.
Yeah, and I will
But
add,
it's two different things they're trying to do, right? One's trying to cheat, right? One person's bypassing the anti-cheat to cheat. One person's trying to bypass the anti-cheat in order to, you know, just pull data that's in the game files, right? Like we saw with when Tom Henderson tweeted out, you know, oh, the EAC has already been bypassed for 2042. That was kind of misrepresented, because the only people that had bypassed it at that point, because the beta wasn't live yet, the only people that had bypassed the quote unquote anti-cheat at that point were people that were data mining. So like it's two different use cases. So, you know, the data miners, the graphic artists that need models won't be as affected.
I made the same mispost for the record. I posted it before Tom. Yes, that's on. That's my B. I just wanted to throw myself under the bus there.
Yeah.
Next question.
Yeah, I'll add to that though. You know, I'm looking at some of the community managers in Activision. Shout out to Ashley Wise. She says, "I'm aware of the concern from the 3D artist community regarding Ricochet. We love our artists and editors. We're digging into it." So.
Oh, that's a great response.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get some more
getting
info
ahead
on
of
that.
it.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, shout out to Ashley. She's I think she just shared on Twitter recently that she's just been with Activision for a full year now. And I remember her posting her announcement post, and she's been killing it since then. I've heard nothing but good things from the creators that she works with. So appreciate that response.
Yeah, heck yeah. She and Shanice have both been great. So this can go to JGOD. You mentioned this earlier, and I think you answered this earlier. Somebody had just simply asked, okay, so what does it actually mean with the anti-cheat trying to detect something on your PC? Will you get banned in game, or will it just not allow you to open up the game?
Well, I based off the details, that it sounds like you're just not gonna be able to open the game. Like, you can't have certain programs open when you're loading up the BattleNet to play Warzone. It's just not gonna allow it, because the anti-cheat doesn't even activate until you actually loaded up the
Sure,
game based
sure.
off what they've said. I mean, so if you're opening the game and it detects, hey, you know what, these programs shouldn't be open, then you're going to have some issues. So it's just going to close down the game, and it'll probably, I mean, to be honest, it'll probably result in less bannings because people just won't even be able to play the game, because you can't get banned if you're not logging in to use your cheats. So
Sure.
they'll just be annoyed and not play the game. Hopefully we get less new users every month.
That'll
So
mean
to
they're
add on to
probably
that-
going to migrate to another free-to-play
New
game.
users.
Yeah. Yeah.
To add on to that really quick, that what you said, JGOD, where like it closes down, that will be a thing. But let's say in the instance of, you know, there's a cheat out there that, you know, is undetected, because that kind of stuff does happen, right? You can find, you have to search, but you can find undetected cheats for, you know, Valorant, for instance, right? That everybody boasts their anti-cheat so great. Same thing for Fortnite. But the thing is, ban waves will still be a thing as well. We'll still get like the occasional tweet from the Call of Duty account saying we banned 50,000 people today. That will still be a thing because they want to, you know, ban people in one fell swoop. They don't want to just, you know, have that instant ban so that, you know, the cheat provider can just figure out what is having them get caught, fix it, and then, you know, it's better to just do a whole wave at once, which is why that's why ban waves are a thing across the industry. So, you know, there will be some people that are able to get through, and then those people will, you know, get caught in a ban wave. So that stuff will still be happening in regards to like permanent bans.
Yeah, Mavriq specifically speaking to like, so if you've already made it to that point to where you haven't been banned and you're going to get caught up in one of those waves, you bypass Ricochet. And at that point, you're the machine learning AI is what's going to catch you after a extended period of having ridiculous stats. And instead of
Not even that.
But do you think that they would just compile a big bank of those dudes and ban them all at once, like you're saying, or do you think that once it realizes your stats are inhuman, that you're just immediately gone?
Well, that'll be part of it, right? Like some people will tune their settings on their aimbot. They'll turn off wall hacks. They'll try to look legitimate, right? And those guys won't necessarily get caught by machine learning because their stats aren't anything crazy, right? Like let's say they're just averaging like a 2.5 KD for the week, right? When they're really like a 0.7 KD player, but the hacks allow them to, you know, play better than they actually are. They're not necessarily going to get caught by machine learning. Again, it depends on what they're exactly tracking, but they most likely won't get caught by that. They'll get caught because, you know, because Ricochet has detected that program running on their PC. And in that case, you know, it won't necessarily be an insta ban, but it'll be, all right, let cheat providers think they're undetected. Let them sell to as many people as possible. Let as many people get caught by our systems as much as possible. And then we drop the whole ban wave. Because if you do it one at a time, right? So like, let's say I download a cheat, play, I get instantly banned, right? And then I go back to the cheat provider. I'm like, yo, what the hell, dude? He figures out what's wrong, and then they're back into the bypassing phase. Does that make sense? It's better to do one full ban wave. Now, hopefully they speed up the amount of these ban waves, you know? So instead of like once, you know, a month, we get like 2 every 2 weeks or something like that, you know, once a week, stuff like that. There will be the occasional like instant ban where, you know, someone's like, has like a very low user base cheat, you know, let's say they're you know, trying to, I don't know, I'm trying to think of stuff, but like as we've seen in like the Valorant community, right, where it's like someone's trying to play ranked and then all of a sudden they get the red screen saying hacker detected, you know, I just banged my mic. That kind of stuff goes viral on the internet because it's like, oh, look, someone got caught. There will be those instant bans every now and then, but for the most part, it's going to be ban wave based.
Yeah. Okay, I think we can move on to our next question. There is one thought that I have whenever we do go to wrap up. I'm going to ask all you guys a question and get your number. We'll see who gets the closest whenever it actually happens.
Okay. We'll just do a couple more. Next question I saw was just curious. This is from Wolf. Just curious, does this anti-cheat apply to all current and future engines for COD on PC from what we know? Will this work retroactively with past CODs, or is this strictly for Modern Warfare engine?
They said it's a Call of Duty anti-cheat. The way that we've been talking about this for a minute. I feel like this is our 3rd episode about cheating. We talked months ago that we were thinking that this was going to happen. Activision's developing their own in-house, so they don't have to go to third-party anything. They don't have to divulge their secrets, blah, blah, blah. They can control Activision loves to control everything about their own games. So I'm not sure, honestly. I lost my whole train of thought right there. I'm not going to pretend like I knew what I was talking about. It's just gone.
The way I read it, it seems as if this is for all future titles.
Yeah,
so, like,
yeah,
I don't
that's
think
it.
this will come to Cold War, for instance, but
Yeah.
it'll come to Modern Warfare 2019 just by extension of it being tied to Warzone.
They didn't say that though. That's what I was talking about before we got on call.
But it
with
is the
Gojj.
same client. That's the thing.
That's what I think, but at the same time, in the blog post, it specifically only mentions Vanguard and Warzone. You would think that they would include Modern Warfare
Unless the
2019.
Unless the client is moving to the Warzone, to the Vanguard client, the Vanguard exe. So, you know, like when you, right now, when you on PC, when you open up Warzone, you have to technically click the Modern Warfare icon, or it's, you know, has the Modern Warfare place on the launcher. Does that mean that they're going to be moving it over to, you know, you have to launch Vanguard technically to play Warzone? Is that what we're thinking then?
I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work. I'm just saying that I feel like if it was going to go backwards and cover Modern Warfare, which still has a player base that is kind of infested with cheaters right now, yeah, I think that they would have specifically mentioned it, just because everybody's going to notice that they only mentioned Vanguard. I'm not even, we're not going to talk about Cold War because we all understand that that's a totally different ball game with Cold War than it is with Modern Warfare because of the client. But I feel like they would have explicitly mentioned it. I don't know. Maybe I can reach out and ask a representative or something and get an answer on that if it will go backwards. But I do think that when all is said and done, that this anti-cheat will compromise every future Call of Duty game. It'll just get better and better every year.
Yeah, and I want to be.
That's the way it reads.
Yeah, I totally agree. I want to be very. This next question, this is kind of a toss-up. We've mentioned this multiple times, and I think I want to be very clear so everybody understands this concept. It says, with the machine learning, will it be able to determine the validation of cheater program versus reverse boosting, or players having a terrible week to a great week? Yeah, we've talked about that. Machine learning is one aspect of the anti-cheat. The other aspect is, hey, if you're running anything in the background that is interacting with the game, your game's not going to open. So there's two kind of pieces to it.
Yeah.
True.
I saw a question up top. Somebody legitimately asked, how do you guys feel about the anti-cheat already being bypassed? Let me explain something to everyone in here. All right. The anti-cheat has not been implemented yet. It is physically impossible to bypass something that does not yet exist.
You're just covering for those big streamers there, Doug.
Yeah, God, man, I can't. I can already tell you, JGOD, you know there's going to be a video tomorrow about what we talked about earlier, and it's going to be snipped and snapped to right where it says what they want to hear.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I've seen a lot of this whole like, oh, it's already been bypassed, and then I talk to some people, and they're like, yeah, that's not actually what it is. It's literally just a file from Modern Warfare 2019. That's a console debug file. That's all. It's just a debug file from 2019. From Modern Warfare 2019. It's not like indicative of them bypassing what's it called? Ricochet. Jesus.
I also saw yesterday where the tinfoil captain himself made sure that he took a screenshot of engine owning replying to Tim like we were talking about, and when Tim said, so anti-cheat tomorrow, and they replied and said, I forget what they said. They said, we're working on it. Use that. It said if engine owning's already bypassed the anti-cheat, then how is it going to work at all? And I'm like, bro, you're supposed to be the guy who knows everything about cheating. Like, what do you mean have they already bypassed? It's not in the game. How is this even a conversation?
Yeah. Well, look, there's a reason I'm skipping some questions, Doug. If you guys have final questions, final thoughts, I'll entertain like two
These
or three
people
more.
need to be addressed, Gojj. You can't just ignore idiots.
I'll take two or three more. If you guys are in Twitter space, make sure you come over to the YouTube where I'll read your message. I'm not answering Twitter DMs at Modern Warzone Weekly in the live YouTube chat, and I'll take two or three more. Does anybody?
I think a good one.
Go.
Is because I know it says oh, it's coming with the Vanguard integration. Have we gotten an official date other than just like rumors and speculation? Have we gotten
I can go back to this CoD blog. I tweeted it out yesterday. I didn't include the quote because it would have been a weird looking snip, like, you know, picture of the quote. But in the season 6 blog, it does mention, I feel like I don't want to say the exact wording. I'm not going to pull up the blog right now, but it does say with the Warzone integration, something season 1. It says season 1 specifically, and that's why I tweeted about season. We do not. I previously tweeted out some dates that clearly it's been pushed back from those dates. I think the dates I originally tweeted out were the 23rd of November.
Oh.
And I believe, I mean, if you just go look at the battle pass counter right now, we're not talking about season 6 ending until December 2nd at this point. So that's clearly inaccurate at this moment. So sometime in December is what we're looking at. And all the wording that they've used, they've made sure to be clear that it is within the year. So it won't go past, it won't be in January. It'll be December.
Well, I felt like the same thing happened with the Cold War integration. It was like, oh, it's going to happen on this day, and then it got pushed out a week, if I recall. I don't know if I'm remembering wrong.
Oh, they needed that. They needed like 3 more months.
Yeah.
That was so bad.
We're talking about all the attachments
like
worked flawlessly. The recoil patterns were normalized.
Oh, man. This one's not going to work like that, thankfully, because they're slowly adding the Vanguard weapons in, even though everybody's like, why are they doing this? Are they doing this just because they accidentally put it?
Because that blueprint, one of the blueprints is bugged. It doesn't even show bullet impacts. I think it's the Obsidian blueprint.
I know it was like that. I will say this: yesterday, when I was using them when they first came out, none of them showed bullet impacts. And then as the day went on, the other 3 blueprints did show bullet impacts.
Also,
I don't know how that works. I'm gonna
have to go back and retest them too, because the one with the 10 attachments, it says it has vital, but the stats were the exact same as the SMG build that doesn't. It says it has fully loaded, but you don't get all your ammo when you use it either. So it doesn't even, like, the attachments aren't even doing what they say, other than, you know, maybe the optic, which is obvious, you know, or the suppressor.
Just because we're on this topic for 1 second, I'm just going to inform anybody who wants to mess around in Warzone and you're bored, you can actually pick up one of those blueprints, and you can pick up one that's not fully equipped with 10 attachments, make your loadout or your field upgrade, the weapon drop, and you can go up to it and hit X one time or whatever button you need to interact with it, and you'll add 1 attachment to it every time. So even with the 8 ones, you can go check out what some of the other attachments look like.
There you go. Nice. All right, I've got like 2 more questions, and Doug, you can finish it off. We had kind of already talked about Cronus, and we don't have to go through all of that again, but somebody had brought up the idea of like, and then we've sort of answered this, but I wanted to re-answer it in more clear fashion. Will programs like anti-micro that lower controller latency on PC likely get you banned, which would really be translated to likely not allow you to open up your game, right? Any thoughts?
Say it one more time.
So if you use programs like anti-micro, which is apparently a program that allows you to lower your controller latency on PC, would this theoretically get you banned? In all reality, we know that doesn't necessarily get you banned. It might mean you can't open up the game, though, right?
I'm going to say I don't think so, because it's not interacting with Warzone. It's interacting with your controller.
Yeah, or DS4 Windows, for instance. I know a couple people are asking about DS4 Windows, too.
Yeah. I don't know what that one is. Mavriq may be able to answer. Another one that I would raise the thing. I used to play a little bit of Escape from Tarkov when Warzone was in DMR zone, and that game will literally cause you hearing issues. If you play that game, please Google how to like get a audio balancer. Yeah, it's like an audio thing that no matter how loud the game gets, it won't go above that level. I know Dr. Lupo uses them, and he advertises about it a lot, and he uses it on Warzone as well. And some people would say that's cheating, because you can directly affect like how loud the footsteps are versus the airstrikes and stuff like that. I don't think so. I think when it comes to stuff like that, that's not cheating. If the game's going to blow my eardrums out, I should be allowed to use something to save my hearing.
Yeah, I mean, the question is it actually interacting with Warzone? That'd be the question of whether or not it'll allow the game to open, right, Mavriq?
I think it would. I think that audio would have to be there.
Yeah, so some of those more like programs where it's a little bit more questionable, so even, you know, things that allow people to use like adaptive controllers, for instance, I think that stuff I don't think you'll catch a ban for it. It will just like turn off the game. It'll just shut the game down, and then they'll have to, you know, you have to go to Twitter and be like, yo, it's not working, and then they mark down that report and it gets sent down the pipeline, and as is the case with software development, you're just gonna have to wait like a month or so for it to get fixed. So, you know, that kind of stuff we really don't know until Ricochet is in our hands.
Yeah. And I would almost venture to say,
hopefully that's on their radar.
Right. I would venture to say that some of these more popular programs that they know are quote unquote good are going to be like, we kind of mentioned this in like layman's term, like they're sort of whitelisted past Ricochet. Like we were talking about with the 3D modeling. I'm sure like things like DS4 Windows, like that's not going to be not allowed. Hopefully they've recognized that on the front end and it doesn't have to go through that pipeline, but there could be a case where some of these more unknown programs that aren't bad but aren't proven to be good yet, it will take them a little while to get to be able to be used, it seems.
On that point though, right? Because there are some. So for instance, there's a program called WASD, which is essentially just a button remapping program, right? But it can be used to, I guess, do some of the stuff that like a Zim would be able to do. So like that's something where it's like it has its proper use cases, but it also has its malicious use cases. So it's like it's in that gray area. It's like, are they going to ban for that? Are they not? We don't know yet.
Yeah. It'll definitely be a let's wait and see and figure it out. Definitely. I think that was most of the questions that I wanted to bring up. If you guys have more questions, of course, comment down below in the actual YouTube video. If you're watching this after the fact, we will get to as many of those questions as possible, and we might even just say, I don't know, we'll see. But regardless, we'll try to answer all of those after we go live, or after we finish the live. It will be a full VOD, and you can comment on the video. Doug, you wanted to finish one thing off, at the end?
Yeah, I have one more thing, and then I wanted to read just 2 of these questions before then. Not that much to say about this one. This is from Andrew Harrison on YouTube. Question: with this integration, is Activision going to continue to seek legal or other action against cheat producers? And my answer is none of us know, because that stuff is kept tightly under bounds because there are lawyers involved, and there is a lot that is way above our level that we have no business knowing, really. If that stuff ever does see the light of day, you will see the same reports that you did before. Most likely is that the cheat provider has received a cease and desist, and they've refused to comply with it or whatever. And then they'll just, Activision will do what they can to get the website taken down. And then they'll just go make another website. And then they have to go through the whole legal process of going through that again. It's almost like they have to evict somebody out of a house, but they have never-ending free houses to make and go live in. So I don't really think that we're going to hear much more about legal issues. And most of these companies are outside of the States, too. We won't focus on that for too long. I just wanted to respond to that. And then the last question I wanted to answer is from David Witt. And he says, Modern Warzone Weekly, can you verify that JGOD is actually AI that is used for machine learning within Warzone? And I absolutely can verify that. This man, I think I've seen him blink 4 times this entire podcast.
Hey, well, thank you, JGOD Mavriq, for coming on to the podcast episode. We really appreciate you guys popping by. This was super fun, super informative, super excited. Any kind of last words? Where can people find you? Certain things that you're working on or excited about in your own content? We can start with JGOD.
Nothing new. I'm just on Twitter. It's just JGODYT. On YouTube, it's just JGOD_gaming on Twitch. Pretty much just chilling till Vanguard. I've been skipping upload days, just been chilling, vibing out, being happy. I know that's toxic to say, but I'm just happy, chilling, watching streams, vibing out. And, if something interesting happens, I'll be like, all right, let me make a video. But right now, I'm just chilling till Vanguard happens. There's not much. I'm ready to grind.
I'm happy for you, man. You literally, if anybody gives you anything about that, it's just such BS, because I literally have been in Discords with JGOD when an update drops talking about stuff. It'll have been 10 minutes and he'll say, yeah, my video's uploading right now. I just recorded a 14-minute video. It's only been 10 minutes. It's humanly impossible. Somehow he's got all the stats and they're uploaded. You do deserve a break before the next big game, and I think a lot of people are taking that. But Mavriq, the man, the myth, the legend himself, the anti-cheat genius, also officially the newest and the first hire of Modern Warzone Weekly, or Modern Warzone period. And appreciate you coming on board to help us out with content, man. Where can we find you?
You can find me at MavriqGojj on Twitter, at MavriqGojj on TikTok. Just look up MavriqGojj on YouTube. You can find me there. Hopefully before Vanguard, I can still push out some more explaining cheating videos, or explaining cheating in games and stuff like that. That kind of content. That's the kind of stuff I'm working on. But yeah, just like JGOD said, chilling until Vanguard, chilling until the new anti-cheat drops, and writing some articles for ModernWarzone.com.
He will actually have he's forgetting to say this, but he will have an article that goes over all of what we talked about in the podcast today, in a much, it's basically a TLDR, too long didn't read, and he's going to go over and cover everything that matters to you in layman's terms about this anti-cheat announcement and what you need to know and how it's going to affect your gameplay moving forward.
Love it.
Pretty much what Doug just said.
Yep. I love it. Well, Doug, how we doing? Anything you wanted to say about your all of your stuff you're working on Modern Warzone? Of course, you hired Mavriq. Anything else?
Not really. Just continuing to do the thing. Twitch live streams whenever I can. We're really killing it with the podcast, Gojj. We're really making steps in the right direction, and that's mainly due to you. So I appreciate that. I want to thank JGOD as always for coming on. This is his second time being on. Always good to have him. Very level-headed dude. I will say though, JGOD, when I saw that clip yesterday of you playing Black Ops 4 and the dog chasing you, bro. I got
like 4 other clips of that.
Oh my god! I didn't know you used. I didn't watch your old content, so man, you used to be a savage. I loved it. I loved listening to it. The one thing that I did want to say before we move forward, very glad to have Mavriq on board with the team. That's not the only announcement. Modern Warzone has huge announcements coming up this year. We're talking big things.
Love it.
Last thing I did want to say, I didn't say it before we moved on to the last segment, but asking all three of you guys, and we'll come back and look at this after the anti-cheat update has happened. 2 questions. Number 1, how big is the initial ban wave? Wait before you say your answers. I'm going to go first. I'm gonna say the initial ban wave is 6 digits, and it's gonna at least be 150,000.
Okay, let me just do some quick math right now.
No, you can't do math. You just got to say something.
I just need to say a number. All right, I'll fill for you. I just have to say a number for like the amount of people that I think will be like into the ban wave. Is that
like how they put out their tweets and they've done 50K or 100K before. I want to know how big this one's gonna be.
112,000.
Ooh, weird number. But you, JGOD?
I think 200K is feasible.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you got they know the popular cheater names, it's gonna be easy to ban people. If you got Pants in your name, if you got what are the other ones? They're just gonna ban all those people, so you better start removing it. I'm just kidding on that though. I don't know. Imagine, be like, just like Pants, and he gets banned for Pants in his name.
That's the new anti-cheat. Actually, it's just that.
Oh my gosh! All right, Mavriq, what's your number?
Shit. All right. They like whole numbers typically, so they don't do like 135. I'd say 150K on that initial ban wave.
Let's go. I'm on track with him. And then last question. One more question goes. I said that there were 2. I said that there were 2. How long do we have after this anti-cheat is released with the introduction of Vanguard, Warzone Pacific? How long do you think it takes before we see the first reports of it being massively bypassed by a big cheat provider? I'm going to say before the first reports of a big cheat provider, I'm going to give it, this is going to sound bad, but I think they'll take care of it quick. 2 weeks.
I'd say a week, because that's typically the norm. That's just normal for stuff like that to be bypassed immediately. There's always stuff you just don't account for when you're programming. That's what happens in real world situations. So I'd say a week, and then it's just going to be a back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole purpose of the team. That's why we mentioned this earlier. They have a whole team behind it in order to combat this arms race that's going to continue to happen.
I think less than a week. I think whoever's trying to do that first is trying to cash out, so they're going to be competitive.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because whatever money you can get right off the beginning, they'll be like, hey, our cheats work. They're going to work for a couple days before they get shut down. They're going to cash out. Everyone's going to be going, hey, they're the ones that work. We're going to go buy them for $100 a month or whatever the hell these losers spend on that. And that's kind of how it goes.
Yeah, I was going to say like 5 days. So I'll kind of be in the middle there.
God, I'm way too optimistic.
Also, that includes unlock tools. If you're using unlock tools, you're also a loser.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree. If you use unlock tools, I understand. You don't harm me and you don't bother me. You don't keep me thinking about you. I'm not gonna tweet about what you do. But if you get banned, you deserve the ban.
Yep. Hey, also, if you think all the big streamers are using that, they just pay some dude. They
literally pay some. They pay some dude. Yeah.
Dude with no shirt, sweating underneath in the basement, just cranking.
It's funny because before Reed Boy got big. Before Reed Boy got big, and I used to talk to him like on his streams during the Cold War when he did that like crazy no shower stream for like a week. He was like, dude, I'll grind your guns. No, you ain't got to pay me. I just do that shit. I was like, what?
Yeah, Tasty's the same way. He grinded Damascus like 17 times.
Oh
like,
my
who the hell does
gosh.
that?
I still don't have it. But I don't understand what's wrong with people.
Oh my god.
Because I don't enjoy, dude. I'm like on the riot shield phase. All right. If I wanted to beat my head against the wall, there's a brick wall outside.
20 hours like somebody throwing gas grenade on shipment. You're like, I can't melee this dude. He's a foot away.
All right. Well, we've tried to outro for the last like 25 minutes. I'm GrandmasterGojj, tournament caster. I just kind of am all over those things. So just check me out on all the major socials. Thank you guys for joining us. What a fun episode. Really excited about the future of Call of Duty, the future of Vanguard, and its integration. Again, make sure you comment down below any of your questions. We will answer those. And hey, subscribe to the YouTube channel. It really helps. And watch our videos. It's really cool. You guys have been showing us a lot of love recently. Super excited to continue pushing content for you. That's all we got. Thanks for joining us.